And we're live. Um, Thank you for tuning in to the Bad Mom Podcast. I'm your host, Anastasia. Today I have a guest. His name is Eric Thomas. He is a former U.S. Air Force cadet, and he wants to share his story about how he joined the Air Force with a single mission as his service country. And he was also undercover informant for the U.S. Air Force to reduce sexual assault and drinking and other violations in the academy because they were so prevalent. This is a cadet that served after my former podcast interviewer Adam Dorito came on the show and talked about his experience. This is another person that has been trying to get the government to change um, his issues. He's gotten as far as going to President Barack Obama to be able to serve his country again. He has done everything from what I've seen, the evidence, and from what he's told me, he has been a really good person with all the integrity and selflessness that an American soldier has and should have. The standards that he showed in his military career got him an honorable discharge, but there are other issues. He cannot serve anymore. He was kicked out 6 weeks before graduation, and Adam Dorito in the previous podcast does talk about Eric Thomas. So here we have Eric Thomas, and he is now a strength and conditioning coach while he fights this for 7 years now. So welcome, Eric. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and I would love for you to tell your story. Anywhere you want to start. I hope that was a good introduction.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. Um, yeah, so I don't know where to start. I'm from Abilene, Texas originally. Grew up in a single family home. Wasn't the richest, not by any means. Played soccer pretty much all my life. Was lucky enough to get a scholarship to go to the academy. Adam mentioned this in his interview. The academy has a prep school, and your academy, if you will, and the prep school is comprised of uh, mostly athletes and a few enlisted individuals. It's designed to try to equip you for the academic, military, and athletic load that you would face at the Hill. So it's a one-year program. So I got a full ride scholarship to go to the prep school in 2008. I am one of those awkward kids because I was homeschooled up until about sophomore year in high school. And so, yeah, so I played soccer. I started my own landscaping company so that I can make some money, so that I could travel and get seen. I have seen challenges and trials since my early days trying to get a scholarship because kind of unrelated to what we're talking about, but I tore my ACL. And if anybody knows anything about athletics, you tear your ACL trying to get a scholarship your junior year, and you can get approached. It's kind of a deal breaker, right? So, speaking just from statistically growing up in a poor neighborhood, single family home, two younger sisters, and now I've got a torn ACL. Let's say that the odds weren't in my favor, but it created an opportunity through those challenges and through those trials to persevere and rely on a good work ethic. I wasn't a big party guy in high school because I had to stay focused and heal my knee up, get a scholarship, and go to the academy. So fortunately enough, I was selected to go. I got accepted. So in 2008, went to the prep school. 2009, went to the academy as starting my freshman year. 2010, this is where we would begin kind of the OSI side, but Before I confuse everyone too much, I will say that I went from soccer, then walked on to the football team my last 2 years or a year and a half at the academy. So I'm an athlete at heart, if you will, despite being an awkward homeschool guy. But that's kind of my forte. Never claimed to be a genius, so I'm not Poindexter. I'm not a valedictorian. Academics was definitely one of the areas I struggled with, especially going to the Air Force Academy where everyone is smart, right? And everyone is an athlete and everyone is just the best, the best, the best. I was one of those guys that had to stay up all night just so that I can get a passing grade at the academy. I went up and down in my academic career. Some semesters were good, some semesters were not so good. But at the end of the day, I was able to put in the work and get enough grades to graduate. Athletically, and I think Adam touched on this, there's a lot of demands that come from the academy. Unlike other institutions or other campuses, to kind of put in perspective for your listeners, we have a full class load. An average day would be waking up roughly around 0600, have a uniform inspection, report for breakfast, you have a formation at breakfast, you go to your classes. From your classes, you go to lunch. If you're an athlete, you will then go to practice for about 5-6 hours, depending on the day. Get back to your room, do some homework, go to sleep, and do it all over again, right? And so, in a nutshell, that would be my 5-year career at the academy. There's a lot of standards at the academy, which is good. You have your athletic standards, your military standards, your academic standards, and if you are to graduate, you have to at least hit the minimum of all those things before you can pin on second lieutenant coming out. A little bit more background, your freshman, sophomore year at the academy, if you decided to leave, you can leave. Free, you don't have to pay anything back. There is no retribution at all. You can just kind of carry on your way. Your junior, sophomore year, however, if you enter the academy, your junior year, now you're locked in. And so if you were to be disenrolled or discharged for whatever reason, you will be faced with a possible obligation of serving enlisted coming out or having to pay back the government 6 figures. And so, junior year and senior year is typically the time the people that are serious about this, they're going to stick it out. And this is, it's interesting because I haven't said this on any other podcast, or it's not in the New York Times or in any of the other reporting things. But I was in the very beginning when I wanted to play soccer, right? I was like, scholarship. I accepted the academy appointment because I tore my ACL, like I said earlier. And I thought, well, man, if something else happens to me, right, I don't want to lose my scholarship. And so what's unique to the academy is, if you don't serve your 4 or 5 years as a student athlete, you don't lose your scholarship because at the end of the day, you're going to come out and serve, right? And so to me, I thought, okay, well, that's a good safety net, right? But being a young 18-year-old guy, I thought, well, I'm gonna make a career playing soccer. So when I went to the prep school, I don't have any family that's in the military, or didn't have it at the time. So I had no background or point of reference to really understand what this was all going to be about, right? So my prep school year, I actually thought, man, this is like insane. Like, what is all this? Like, this is just go, 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 go. Once I got out of basic, I thought, you know what? I can go play soccer. I had other options. I had other scholarships I could have taken. Like, let me look at that, right? And my roommate, who was an amazing wrestler coming out of Minnesota, real supportive, was like, hey, but just, stick it out, see what you can do. But I support you any other way, right? And I actually filed a voluntary form to get out in the prep school. because I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, this is insane. But having that connection with my roommate led to having a stronger connection with everyone in my squadron. And I think at the end of the day, that's really unique to the academy, that you are able to lean on one another to get through the struggle and get through the suck, because unless you go, you don't know what we're talking about, right?
No.
And it helps you get through. It helps you get through all the sacrifices you have to make, right? And so this kind of gives us an idea of the environment of the academy. There's a lot of demands, but you learn to depend on each other, and you learn to rely on each other. And that's what changed my decision my first year to not leave. Going into my freshman year at the academy, it also gave me better perspective on the bigger picture, right? This isn't about soccer per se, even though it's fun and it got me here. But it was the first time I think that I had a realization that, okay, there's more to this. There's something deeper here, right? And at the end of the day, it comes down to service. And so for me, I thought I'm going to enjoy the rest of my competitive, soccer, turn into football career. But this is now my aim, and this is now my goal. And the guys around me, they're family, man. I'd do anything for them. So going now into my sophomore year, and speaking about this OSI, I just think it's important for your listeners to know that on my end, and I guess what's similar from other reasoning from other OSI informants or OSI agents, I had, and I still have, no qualms with anyone from the Air Force or even the Academy in and of itself. I want to serve still. That's why I've been fighting so long. And I didn't sign up with OSI so that I could blacken the eye of the institution or anything like that. For me, it was deeper, because if we're a family, what am I supposed to do if one of my airmen or female squad mates is being assaulted, right? And what if I know something about that, or what if I just turn the other way, right? I mean, she's depending on me just as much as I'm depending on her, right? So I would hope if I was assaulted, someone would do something. Likewise, I had two younger sisters, and they wanted to go to the academy, and I thought the same thing. If they were assaulted, I would hope somebody was doing what I'm doing. And so that kind of sets the framework for my mindset going into this whole thing. In 2010, I was approached by OSI as a witness, asking if I had any information related to a party that I was at a few weeks before, because apparently there was spice at that party. And what spice is, it's a synthetic form of marijuana. I had no information. Again, I was an awkward homeschool shy kid that was just hoping I don't fail out.
You weren't going to smoke fake marijuana at a party.
Yeah, I was going to smoke. No, I mean, not at all. I mean, yeah, definitely not. I mean, and I didn't have any information. I thought like, oh, whoa, spice. And this was right in the beginning where there was a zero tolerance policy sent down from the superintendent, General Mike Gould, basically saying, this is a no-go, hard stop, you're out if there's anything going on with this. So when I was brought in and asked about spice, I thought, well, I have no idea. Even know what do you smoke it out of? I don't know. So that was the initial reason why they brought me in, to ask me about that. It was a real short conversation. However, they also asked me about a friend of mine that was assaulted. And in that conversation, I didn't know what happened to her, but I knew something happened to her, right? There was like this polar opposite moment where I was friends with her. I mean, I knew her, and then one day she looked like I don't know, like we're all tired, right? We're all struggling, but it looked like there was like a missing piece of her, like something was missing. And she was just not the same, like at all, like not even kind of, there's something wrong. And so when the agents asked me if I had any information related to her assault, well, then it made sense, right? And I thought, wow, like, geez, that this sparkly-eyed, smiling, just light up the room, go getter type of girl is like a wilting flower. I mean, it was awful. Um, so I didn't have any information on that at the time either. But what the agent asked me, after pretty much telling him everything that I had, he said, you seem like the kind of guy that, and I'll never forget it, you seem like the kind of guy that wants to do the honorable thing. You seem like the kind of guy that wants to do the right thing. If you had an opportunity to help out, would you? And I thought, certainly, yeah. I mean, of course I
Wow,
would. I mean,
that's really convincing.
yeah, there was nothing that gave me any indication that
You
this
were
was
being
bad.
played.
Yeah, right. And to kind of put in context, I think Adam hit a little bit on this. OSI is akin to the Army's CID, which is akin to, and I think this kind of clicks for most people, Navy's NCIS, right? And so this is the law enforcement agency of the Air Force, and they're only concerned about federal crimes, right? So this isn't like, hey, look, you took 2 milks from the lunchroom and you didn't report that. Like this was nothing minor. This was federal issues. OSI's general mission is to work on fraud, waste, and abuse, similar to like the FBI, counter intel, counterterrorism, cyber warfare, those type of things. So I think if your listeners don't have a military background, if you put it kind of in the perspective of the FBI, it's you got it pretty much on the head there. So
But
so on
nobody's
this,
overseeing the FBI.
right, yeah, exactly. So the chain of command structure of OSI is different than your normal squadron, simply because they don't have the same chain of command. Because if they did, they couldn't investigate the Air Force chain of command, if you will. So they're separate and apart. When they brought me in, there was nothing that made me think like these guys aren't on the same team. And this is very important. When he asked me to help out, I wasn't in jeopardy of anything. They didn't kind of wave like, "Hey, you want to cut a deal?"
Like
This
in
was 2000.
Adam's case.
Yeah, exactly.
Bit,
Yeah, exactly. Adam's case had a bit of a difference to it, but for me, this was 2010. I was a sophomore, right? I wasn't committed to the Air Force. I wasn't in jeopardy of being disenrolled. There was nothing coming from that. And they didn't say, "Hey, we'll pay you." They didn't say, "Hey, your chances of becoming a pilot will be better if you help us." There was none of that. It was straight, "Hey, you seem like you want to do the right thing, and would you?" So I did. And I signed the paper, signed non-disclosure agreements, and the first task that I had was to build a social network, because again, I didn't have anything, right? And so I had to find out who's the who. We went through a few weeks of meeting here and there to talk about entrapment training, to talk about different situations, cover stories, to talk about if I had if there's a situation where I need to make, a phone call or something like that, what to do, just different scenarios, playing that out, what we were looking for, right? Different levels of information. Hey, see if, there's anything going on with this particular person or what have you. And so from 2010 to right around 2011, was really just expanding my social network, getting to know the who's who, and just telling the agent that I was working with, his name is Special Agent Munson, what I knew, right? And when I knew it. And so that's what I did, along with playing soccer, along with the academics, along with the military load and everything else in between. So if we kind of go forward now to 2011, there was information coming on who would later be convicted of the Claxon case. There was a female that made a report, but there wasn't enough evidence to go anywhere or do anything. And so she had told a friend of hers, and that friend was also assaulted. And when she was brought into the OSI interview room for her own case, she was able to talk about Claxton's victim or her friend and that assault. And so she shared that information. So that's how it got onto the OSI radar. But again, there wasn't enough evidence to open up an investigation. And so what made us kind of different is that, and I guess this will kind of put it in context for your listeners, what made us get convictions, and I guess you could say become more successful than an oral policy, is that what we would do is we would get information of a potential assault, and instead of bringing the victim in or having the victim report, 9 times out of 10, what ends up happening is it's a he said, she said. Over 90% of sexual assaults involve alcohol, right? So that's another dynamic. When you couple that up with the fact that he is probably going to have any witnesses collaborate with his story so that it would be harder to prove, and she would have a hard time providing any information that would substantiate her claims, it ends up being kind of like a dud and it doesn't go anywhere. What we did that was different is that instead of working from the point of reporting and then investigation, what we did is we said, okay, if we have reason to believe, whether it be from hearsay or whether it be from another case or what have you, we're going to try to find facts, find evidence, find facts, find the truth of what could be a sexual assault case, and we're going to build the case before we even speak to the victim and before we even speak and investigate the perpetrator. And so instead of bringing you in if you're assaulted, and now you have to point to me as the investigator of go look under this rock because there's evidence there, instead we're going to say, hey, we know you're assaulted, we looked under the rock, we have your case, now we just need a yes or no from you. So we kind of did it differently in the sense that we're working a little bit from the other end of building the case, which if you're a victim and you're coming in, instead of you trying to convince anyone, it's more along the lines of we already know and we're here and already believe you. We've already been working this in the background and you had no idea. And so all we need now from you is the go ahead. And so that's a completely different dynamic than what you normally see, because what you normally see is having to prove the case, which we did do that, but we didn't put the victim in a position.
That's great.
Right. And so, from that perspective, it was successful. And then on the other end, it provided the chain of command or whomever we were looking at a better situational awareness, right? Because if he didn't assault anyone, or if there was an allegation that just turned out not to be true, well, it wasn't going to go anywhere. So we weren't like headhunting for anybody or anything like that. In fact, there was multiple points of redundancy that it couldn't just be hearsay. There had to be an actual case there. So we were also able to provide better situational awareness to the commanders, so your squadron commanders in every squadron, of what was going on, right? So at the end of the day, whether you are for victims or not, whether this type of conversation makes people uncomfortable or not, whether you have a military background or not, you can't argue with the fact that we had some of the highest reporting rates and highest convictions at any given Air Force base at any given 2-year period to date, right? And so it worked is what I'm getting at. It worked. But if we were to go back to the timeline, 2011, so that kind of puts in context of how we do things. So that moving forward in 2011, there was another victim that happened with Claxton, right? And this Claxton victim, long story short, because I don't want to provide any information that might, if she ever listened to this, make her uncomfortable. But
That's good.
the nuts and crannies of that case is essentially she had a friend that was in the squadron, and at the academy, it is not unheard of to just be friends with people from other squadrons. It's not completely separated. You can do that. And this victim, Claxton, was in my squadron, right? So we were in the same squadron, and that's just by circumstance. I wasn't planted there or anything like that. It just there's a shuffle after your freshman year, and when you go to your sophomore year, you were in your next squadron for the next 3 years. So just so happened that Claxton was in my squadron. And so in 2011, in March of 2011, in fact, Claxton had some people over in his room. This female came over with the other person in my squadron to his room. There was alcohol in the room. I knew there was alcohol in the room because when I went to the room after being told that people were going to his room, I picked up a cup and there was alcohol in it. And so that was the only indication there was alcohol in the room. So I stayed for a little bit. Obviously, Claxton at this point is on our radar. So he is a target. We do know and have enough reason to believe up to that point that this guy is not a good guy. There's some red flags flying around him. So while in his room, she was there, other people were there. Kind of think of it like 5 or 10 people coming in and out. There was drinking.
Was that allowed?
Drinking is not allowed in the dorms, right?
So hanging out in the room was okay.
Yeah, so you can hang out in the room. What wasn't allowed was having a female behind closed doors, right? So you had a and this is a rule that has been repealed because at the time there was a what was it? Don't ask, don't tell policy,
yeah.
Right? And so now, of course, the political landscape has changed a little bit more. But at the time, that's where that rule came from. So this victim came over. So there were 2 violations at the Air Force rules being broken at the time. There was alcohol in the room, and there was a female behind closed doors, right? And so from that perspective, if I was to say, let me go tell the squadron commander, which is what your cadet handbook or your airman handbook would tell you to do. I didn't. Why? Well, because we're working a case here, right? And so it's not that information was unknown. It's just that instead of telling the squadron commander, I was filtering information to OSI. So on this night, after everyone's drinking, there's nothing that's really kind of given anyone a goosebumps that something is happening or anything like that. And I'm staying in the room as long as I can to make sure nothing's happening. Well, it turns out that she left, and when she left, to me, I thought, okay, cool, nothing to worry about. I left, and some of the other people left as well. Well, I went back to my room, and she went back to Claxton's room. I'm not quite sure. I believe she left something in the room, if memory serves me. So she went back to the room, and she was intoxicated at this point, right? These were like a few hours have gone by. I went back to the room and I went and called one of the numbers that we had for OSI to let them know that just what happened. Again, this wasn't going to send a red flag. It's a cadet rule, but it's not a federal rule, but we are building a case here, right? And so I went back and I made a call to OSI. No one picked up. So I thought, okay, no big deal. I mean, this isn't something that's really pressing or anything like that. So I'm in my room, and shortly after, I want to say, just within maybe 15 or 20 minutes, definitely less than an hour, one of the other cadets in my squadron came to my room and said, hey, something happened to the female. She called me and she is broken up, and something happened right then and there. Obviously it wasn't hard for me to put 2 and 2 together and thought, man, what did I miss? Like, this is, it's an awful feeling knowing that what you thought wasn't going to happen, and you kind of signed up to try to prevent that stuff, right? Happened, and it was completely off your radar. And I have kind of rehearsed that moment 1,000 different times to figure out what I should have done different. And to this day, I wish I could have done something different. I don't know what it would be, but it's just, there was nothing that pointed that was going. I thought she was gone. So myself and he went down to her room. She was completely emotional and very, obviously, and she was telling us what happened and everything else. And so, we stayed in there for a few hours, encouraged her to make a report. to go in and make a unrestricted report. And the difference between an unrestricted and a restricted report is that an unrestricted report is going to allow an official investigation to begin. A restricted report will basically be keeping the entire incident sealed. So there is no investigation, but you are allowed to get some support and able to get some, I guess you could say, mental health resources. And so it's kind of, you're in between. So we encouraged her to report it, and it was totally up to her, obviously, on how she wanted to go about reporting it. But we thought, we're with you. Hey, whatever you need, we're with you. The other kid that was involved, he's a good guy. He's still serving active duty today. And after a few hours, she decided that she was going to report it, that she was going to let us know how it goes and everything else. But at that moment, there was a dilemma now, right? At least for me and what I was doing with OSI. And that's because if I was to go and she decided to make a restricted report, well, if I go to the agents and I say, hey, here's what's going on, well, by law, they're going to open an investigation. And so in opening that investigation, it, to me, it was a moral dilemma, because now her wishes were to keep this restricted, right? And so what do? Do you go and you kind of violate her wishes in this moment that I'm not a victim of sexual assault, so I don't know what she's going through. And I can only imagine what it's like to deal with the demands of the academy. And now this, who am I to say, sorry, we're going to override what you want to happen and open up an investigation, right? And so it's a real tough, it's tough. I don't know what the right move is with that. And so I erred on the side of honoring her wishes and not doing it. So what I did do, though, is kind of work in the gray area with the agent, with Special Agent Munson, saying something happened. And he made it very clear that if I go forward, they're gonna have to open an investigation. And I didn't give names, I didn't give details, but I just said something happened. And so it was almost like an unofficial Roger that, let's keep following the dude. But if we know more, we're obviously gonna have to do something.
So the unrestricted report, I thought that's what she filed.
Restricted report.
She filed a restricted report.
Restricted report, yeah. Right.
Okay.
She would
she was too
later
scared
on,
to be shamed.
Correct, yeah. Yeah. So immediately then she filed restricted. Later on, she would unrestricted when she realized that Claxton was going to court. But at that moment, she filed restricted. So so nothing happened, right? Nothing was looked at, nothing was open, nothing happened at that moment. But what we did know is that Claxton's a bad guy, right? Man, and this guy is him. Yeah. So this guy is, he's definitely on the radar. So if we move forward, so that event happens in March. And for me personally, my story is directly connected to the Claxton case, because it is the Claxton case that would ultimately end in my disenrollment. And to kind of let your listeners know, if they're kind of losing their headspace right now, the rules, or the reason I was honorably discharged, stems from cadet rules, academy specific rules. So I didn't get discharged for any UCMJ violation. I didn't get discharged because of anything criminal at all. I didn't get discharged because of a AFI is what we would call it, Air Force instruction. So that's kind of like rules for the Air Force. Didn't break any of that, right? I got discharged for having too many demerits at the academy, and the academy is built on a demerit system. And so if you, and Adam touched on this a bit, if you miss a dentist appointment, you can get demerits. If you miss formation, you can get demerits. So demerits are just really discretionary according to your commander and according to the offense. So this comes in play later on, but for that night in March, right, there would be later on demerits for not reporting to the commander, the alcohol being in the room, and not reporting the female to the commander, of being behind closed doors. Part of my overall fight right now is that there is no recognition so far from the Air Force to say, oh yeah, because of OSI. They're basically just saying, oh, you didn't do it. Just disregarding the fact that, no, I did, but it was to OSI, right? So moving forward, Claxton's on the radar, bad dude. There's other cases that are going on at this time too, right? And this would be kind of the period of building the social network. Is starting to get a lot of information, right? Now there's cases that are popping up of drugs and narcotic distribution. And to be honest with you, I wasn't, I joke around with some of my buddies from the academy because, I'll tell them, man, like, there were so many stupid things that we did that would, if they were like, you're getting disenrolled for the freshman prank you made, I would be like, Roger that. Like, I get it. Like, there's no excuse for that, right? Which I did get in trouble for. And so there, I don't want anyone to think that I'm like shifting anything with OSI because it's just not. I've been as honest and as transparent as I can be throughout this whole process. And so going through March in 2011, there's other cases that are also popping up, whether it be from narcotics, whether it be from gaining information about other potential assaults. Things are going.
So other cases, and we're going to go back to the Jamal
Yeah,
Cooks case that you
sure.
took over after Dorito got kicked out of the military Air Force
Which I didn't
Academy.
even know he was involved with that case. So it's
To this
ironic that,
day, or you just,
well, no, obviously when things came public, I did,
okay.
but at the time there was no, and that kind of leads to a bigger problem, right? There's no overlap of me knowing that this is happening
That would have
by
helped.
this means. Yeah, it would have helped. The best I had was just kind of information on the target, and that was pretty much it. And so, yeah, you're right. There is, that is, and that was a bad case. I mean, it really was.
Yeah.
It really was.
And not to interrupt or get too into detail with all the cases, because well, how many cases, let's just say, how many cases have you investigated of individuals that were accused of sexual assault?
Yeah, so there's about 25 victims.
25 victims.
Victims, yeah. And roughly about 4 cases we investigated for sexual assault, but only 3 ended up in a conviction. The other one, it was just a voluntary. They left pretty much before we can conclude it, right? So, it kind of brings up a point here that, if we were able to continue, or if there, we were able to not let him leave to just to go, we could prove or disprove, whether or not the offenses were committed. So it's a question mark of that person being out in the civilian world.
Right. And both of these people that we keep repeating, Jamal Cooks and Claxton, they were both accused by civilians, correct? And that is how they got caught and tried. But the Air Force took the case over from the Colorado Springs Department, the police department, and tried them in the military under UCMJ.
UCMJ, yeah.
UCMJ.
So that's mostly, it's not necessarily that's, how and why they got caught. It's more egregious than that. It's because that was the civilian victims are just one of many victims. And so it just popped on the radar a little bit easier in the civilian world, but there was multiple victims for each, both in the civilian world and at the academy. And the reason why we were able to not let it go through, say, a civilian court system is mostly because it was a preponderance of evidence coming from the academy side that we could take it to trial instead of just the 1 victim or 2 victim in the Colorado Springs, right? So it kind of ties into the work that we were doing, is that, we had the evidence and a good case to do it, to put it through trial through the Air Force, versus hand it over to CS Springs where they just have 1.
Okay. And another confusion I have, so Operation Gridiron, it started in January of 2012, right?
Yep.
Okay, so that was after you were already with the investigations and you were already working for them. So what is the difference here of what you were already working on? Is there a different
Yeah, it's so, and I'll get there.
Oh,
Because the
okay.
way Operation Gridiron went down, it was purposely designed that way to
Okay.
happen the way it did.
So we're getting ahead of
So
ourselves. Okay.
yeah, so we're almost there. We're almost there, and mind you, and for the listeners, I'm trying to make it as understandable as possible. And so if everyone just keeps holding on, I promise it'll start to make sense. I'm just saying it so that we can go back and fill in the gaps here.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
if we go to so we're in 2011, right? We jump to the end of or the fall semester of 2011. Um, in this period now, there's a lot of information coming out on a lot of different potential cases stemming from sexual assaults and drugs and narcotics, but not enough to do anything yet, except for the Claxton case, which is again, it was just lynched on the victim's wishes at the time that we didn't do anything. We could have, but we just didn't. So if we go to the fall of 2011, at this point in time on the OSI side, coming out of the summer at the academy, it's a little goofy because there's so many summer programs going on. Some people are going to flight training. Some people are going to different bases for ops missions and different shadowing type of leadership opportunities. There's a lot of different programs going on at the academy in the summer. And so I didn't have a lot of information in the summer, really on anything, simply because there's like a quarter of the cadet population there, and then the other half is the new freshman class coming in and going through basic, right? And so there wasn't, to give everyone kind of an idea, there's nothing, the reason there's a gap there is because there's nothing going on. So as we come into the fall semester now, 2011, Special Agent Munson, I don't know where he was. No one told me anything, right? But when I checked in with OSI, it was if I had any information to, again, call the OSI number. But the Special Agent Munson that I was working with up until that point, he was no longer there. So aside from all the stuff that we just discussed about Claxton and some of the other cases that were beginning to open up, coming in out of the summer into that semester year, it was more of like a follow-up, like, hey, I'm just getting back. We're starting school. Don't have anything. Okay, cool. Here's a number if you do. That quick, right? And so as we're going forward in the fall semester, I'm still going based off of the directives of Munson in the spring to follow and track Claxton. OSI all along the way, even before I signed up, told me my chain of command would know, right? Going to the non-disclosure agreements, the non-disclosure agreements were designed so that if I was approached by someone asking me about OSI, I would tell them to go talk to OSI, or tell them the cover story that OSI told me to say, and then tell OSI, someone asked me about what was going on. And so legally, I wasn't able to say anything since day one, right? But because of that, so as we're going into the fall semester, I'm thinking, okay, well, let's just go ahead. My chain of command knows. Everything that I'm doing, I'm not doing it against the protocol of the academy, because I am reporting it to officials. I'm just not reporting to my squadron commander. So as we go into the fall semester, well, Claxton is still going out, and if he goes out, and I know he's going out, and there's an opportunity to go out and track and follow, then of course I'm going, right? And when I would do that, I would sign out, right? So if we're at the academy, part of the protocol is if you're leaving the base, you have to sign out. Well, a few of these times, if Claxton was leaving and I was leaving and I'd signed out, I would even sign out if we weren't allowed to leave, right? And when you sign out, this is essentially me telling you that, hey, I'm leaving, right? So I'm putting my name on paper, or we would go through the computer to say, hey, I'm leaving. And I did that because, again, I'm not hiding anything. I'm under the understanding that OSI is talking to my chain of command. However, if you're leaving base when you're not supposed to leave base, going back to the demerits, well, that would be considered OTF. And OTF stands for over the fence. And there is over the fence in the real Air Force as well, not for so many small things, but it is a thing. And so if you leave base when you're not supposed to, you could get demerits, and you could get a lot of demerits. Well, I left base and still signed out because I'm thinking, well, OSI told me to tell him I changed command, so I'm not going to hide anything. So I'm leaving. So that's what I did. So as we go from August to September to October, I'm signing out if Claxton's leaving. I'm signing out if I'm going to meet with an agent or what have you. In November, and this was during an Army Air Force weekend, anytime we play different service academies, it's a big weekend. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of media. It's just it's a big day, right? And so on this particular time or particular weekend, there were tons of people coming over to the academy to watch the game, and there were different boxing events and things going on the night before kickoff. So this is a Friday in November, and on this night, I and every other cadet was going to the boxing matches and everything else. Well, I got wind that one of the prep school classmates that I went to prep school with, that Claxton also went to prep school with, so it's a mutual friend. She at the time had a fiance that was on the football team. She was coming on base, haven't seen her in a while. She was kicked out for unrelated reasons about a year before, but we still kept in touch. She lived in the Colorado Springs area because, again, her fiance was on the football team, so she was still close. So when she was coming over to watch the boxing games and just pretty much, get involved with all the activities going on at the academy, it's like, oh, cool, well, she's coming on, hey, it'd be nice to see her. Well, got wind that she was going to go out to dinner with a bunch of other cadets as well, one of which was Claxton. And I thought, well, that's probably something pretty important to go to, because I know they've always been friendly. This guy is on the radar, obviously, and she's a close friend of mine. Definitely not going to have the same thing happen twice. And so we went out with a bunch of other cadets, again, signed out. Went to Buffalo Wild Wings in the Colorado Springs area. There was 8 Buffalo Wild Wings. You could tell she was drinking a little bit before that night, but there was nothing that was really, like a warning flag or anything like that. A lot of us were of age drinking at Buffalo Wild Wings. It's about 20 different cadets there. Nothing that's a red flag. Well, at the end of dinner, amongst everyone kind of talking and saying, hey, well, what are we going to do? There's a lot of excitement and things like that. One of the guys said, hey, let's go downtown. And kind of looked around the table and said, okay, who all wants to go downtown? Well, we got a call from someone in the squadron saying, oh, well, only seniors can sign out, so no one can leave at the time. And it's not uncommon. Usually, if it's a weekend right before a football game, you're probably not going to leave. And so not uncommon. Well, there were still some cadets that wanted to still go downtown. They didn't want the night to end, right? And so Claxton was one of those guys that wanted to go downtown. Well, the would-be victim said, well, hey, I'm going to go back to the academy. She was going to go to her fiance. I offered to drive her back as well. And so we went back to the academy. She said to the group that was going to go downtown, if you guys go, let me know, and I'll go with you. Well, again, I'm thinking, man, well, the night could have ended right there, right? But okay, well, it's obviously not gonna end for me. So the guys that decided to go said, okay, well, we'll go back and we'll check in for what's known as DI, and DI just stands for dorm room inspection. And so every night, think of it like a curfew. At taps, people are going to come by and knock on your door to make sure you're here because you're supposed to be there. And so the decision was made amongst the guys that wanted to go back out is that we'll go and we'll report in for dorm room inspection, but we'll leave right afterwards to go downtown. Okay, cool. So that was the decision. I was one of the only people that signed out again, right? And this will come into play here in a bit. So I signed out. The other guys didn't sign out. I signed out. Claxton was getting a car. They found a DD because everyone was going downtown. And the victim sent a text out she knew a bunch of the guys saying, hey, are you guys going to do anything? And one of the guys said, yeah, we're going to go downtown. Come and walk over because we're about to leave. So she walked over from her fiance's room.
And he didn't come?
He is a football player, right?
Oh,
And
okay.
so he was getting ready for the and let me kind of caveat this. The football team usually stays at a hotel before a game and whatnot to prep themselves, but it's right on base. So this isn't, when I say room, this is kind of like what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
So she was like, yeah, I'll come. And so she came over, everyone waited for her, and I could tell she was drinking because now she was kind of a little bit slurred in her words, kind of, wobbling. I thought, oh man, okay, all right, well, let's, we're all going. So we got into the car. Um, I was sitting right next to her. Claxton was sitting kind of diagonal. We were in a Jeep at the time, and so he was sitting behind me. Um, over my shoulder. So there was nothing, goofy to look at. So we drive to Colorado Springs downtown, go to a bar. Well, at this point in the drive going to Colorado Springs, um, she sat down. And when she sat down, you could tell just how drunk she actually was, right? Because she was definitely a lot more intoxicated than what it looked like. Because she passed out in the 15-minute car ride it took to get off base and go downtown. She was drooling on my shoulder. So by the time we got to downtown Colorado Springs, I said, well, I'm going to stay back. I'll stick with the DD. She obviously can't go in, so I'll stay with her. You guys go have fun. We'll stay here. When you guys are ready to go, then, we'll pick you up. So we went to Colorado Springs, or we just kind of parked off the curb downtown. And I'll never forget this because this was like a red flag, right? So as we're getting out of the Jeep, one of the guys gets out, a big tall dude. I get out, she gets out because we have to pull the second row down to let Claxton and the other guys get out. And as we did that, we're all kind of standing on the curb and talking about the plans. Okay, you guys are gonna go here, we'll stay here. When you guys are done, let us know, come back. And as we're kind of talking and just kind of, handshaking, dabbing everybody up, I'm looking over my shoulder and I'm seeing Claxton kind of talk to her and he's kind of flirting with her. And I'm thinking, oh God, like, here we go. And like, he gives her a hug, which is kind of weird because why would you do that? Right. Like, I mean, you're going to a bar, dude. Like, you're not getting deployed. What are you talking about? Gives her a hug and like tries to give like a little kiss on the cheek. And it was like really awkward where I was like, okay, like, see you guys later.
She has a fiance.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's no, I mean, it sticks out, right? So we get back in the car. I get in, the DD gets in, she gets in. I was recovering at the time, and this is kind of put it in perspective for everyone. I had just had knee surgery. So it came back to bite me from my junior year. My knee was in a kind of an air cast, right? So I really didn't want to go out that night, if I was going to be honest with everybody. I mean, I really didn't. And so as we're sitting there, she kind of like comes to her senses and says she has to use the bathroom. And so there was an ice cream shop across the way, and I was like, hey, I'll take her there. So we walk down, go to the bathroom. I'm waiting outside, and I'm waiting for like 5 or 10 minutes. Well, she passed out in the bathroom, right? And just a random person went in there. I was like, hey, I think your friend has passed out. And I thought, oh man, like this is really bad. So went in there and kind of like picked her up and like kind of hobbled my way up stairs and took her to the car. And we thought, okay, well, let's get the guys to come back. It's time to go. Let's find out where she lives so we could take her home, and then we'll get back on base. Well, in that process, her ID wasn't from Colorado Springs, right? She had her ID from her hometown. So we kept kind of like, shaking her, asking her, hey, where do you live? Like, we don't know where you live. None of us have been to your house before. Like, where do you live? And she was just kind of mumbling this jargled thing, and we really couldn't tell like what she was saying. So we opened up her purse, opened up her wallet, tried to look at her ID, nothing. We tried to look for something to give us an indication of maybe she's over here, nothing. Well, none of us are really friends with her fiance. Her fiance was a class over us. And so unless you're kind of on the same sports team or you have some type of camaraderie, you don't really hang out with people under or over you.
Yeah. Are
So
you allowed to let her come back to base and stay in his dorm room?
yeah, it's a no-no, right? So bringing her back is kind of a judgment call because it is against rules to bring, at this point now, a civilian girl back on base when you're not supposed to sign out.
Yeah.
So we kind of sat there and thought, okay, does anyone know where she lives? Like, does anyone know of anybody that knows where she lives? And we asked, does anyone have her fiance's phone number so we can ask him where she lives? Well, none of us had those answers, right? So we thought, okay, well, best thing to do is take her back, find her fiance, let him know, and be like, you know, good luck, man. Hey, here's what's going on. Yeah. So that was the idea, right? So we went back on base. Everybody got back in the car when we went back on base. I mean, she was, you know, I'm thinking when she left after dinner, she must have like a lot of shots, because I mean, she was just like on another world. And so we borderline thought, like, should we take her to the hospital? Like, I don't know. Like, this is like, you know, this is bad. But we went back to the academy, started carrying her up. At this point, one of the other cadets are kind of helping me carry her up to the room, or to our squadron. And myself, a few other cadets, and Claxton, of course, we're standing in the hall, and we thought, okay, does anyone know where she lives? And we're like, okay, well, let's go to my room, right? So take her to my room. My roommate, who is a soccer player, he was asleep, and he sleeps with earplugs and an eye cover, because me, not being the genius, has to stay up all night, all the time to get studies done, right? So, you know, we made it work. And so he's asleep. We get into, we put her on my bed, and it's myself, it's two other cadets, and it's Claxton. And we think, okay, let's go ahead and we turn the light on. Kind of looked around at each other and said, okay, we know he lives in this squadron, so we'll walk over there to see if we can find him or somebody that knows him, somebody that can just help us out, to take her back. And so Claxton, at the time, his room was right across from my room. So we have these alcoves in our dorms or in our squadrons. And each alcove has 4 rooms, right? So on one side of the hall, there's 2 doors, 2 bedrooms. And on the other side of the hall, there's 2 doors for 2 bedrooms. And so Claxton left, and he went to his room, and the DD, which was his roommate, also left and went into the room. Myself and this other cadet said, okay, let's go ahead and walk over there and find our fiance or just somebody that can help us, and we'll bring them back and take care of this. So as we're walking out.
Why did Claxton and the DD just go back to their rooms? Why didn't they help you guys?
Because I was trying to make it as clear as possible that, hey, we got it, like, don't worry about it. You know, as nonchalant of a way as I could to say, all right, we got it. So as as myself and this other cadet were walking down the hall, we lived on, so think of like an L. The long part of the L was where my room was at. And so we're living on the long hallway. So by the time we got out, started walking down the hall and turned the corner, well, Claxton, in just that amount of time, Claxton went into my room, right? And I think this is important. He went to my room, and it just so happened that his roommate was calling out for us right before we turned the corner to go down the stairs to go find her fiance. He said, hey, where's Claxton? Is he with you guys? Did he go with you guys? And I was like, what do you mean did he go with us? And he said, well, he's not in a room. So immediately I knew, I cannot believe this. Really? Like, I mean, almost like, are you kidding me? Like, my roommate is in there, right? Like, mind you, my roommate is in my room. Okay. So we went back and went to my room. I was like, of course, you know, he's not with us. Now my room is locked. And I and the other cadet, because at this point, everyone knows something's wrong here, right? This is not normal. So we started banging on the door. As we're banging on the door, Claxton kind of creeps it open and mumbles something, right? Like, I don't know what he's mumbling. He says something, then tries to shut it again. Well, I put I put my foot there, and we're asking him, dude, what are you doing? And he's like mumbling something or another. He tries to start shutting the door. I put my foot there, put my hand on the door. It's like, no, dude, seriously, what are you doing? And at this point, then we open the door. The lights were turned off. The blinds were shut. And there she is laying there completely unconscious with her pants unzipped and shirt pulled up. At this point, there's no questions asked, right? Like, I mean, this is obvious, right? And so I'm heated. The other cadet with me is also heated. And it was, at this point, it was, hey, get to your room, like, you piece of shit, basically. Like, this is, it's obvious what you're about to do, right? And he's like trying to explain himself, and we're like, dude, just get out the room.
What is there to explain, dude? Why
Right,
are you
exactly.
in this room?
There's no questions here. I mean, there's absolutely no questions here. So myself and the other cadet is, we're sitting there like, are you kidding me? He goes to his room and is having a fit, right? And his roommate comes over. I don't know, he's throwing stuff. I mean, it's just loud. His roommate comes over. He is flipping out in there. He comes back to my room the minute his roommate leaves and says something. I mean, again, trying to, I guess, explain himself. And I stand up in front of him, and the other cadet stands up in front of him. And the minute we're coming towards him, he takes a swing. He clocks the other cadet. Yeah. And when he clocks the other cadet, I go and I push him up against the closet doors. The other cadet falls back on my roommate, wakes my roommate up. I'm holding him up against the door. I look back and say, take her to another cadet's room. Just get her out of here and take her to another cadet's room. So he goes and he picks her up, takes her to another cadet's room. I'm holding Claxton up against the wall. Mind you, Claxton is like 6'4", 6'5", former football player. I'm a soccer player, right? And so he throws me back, and now we're fighting. I mean, fists are flying. Things are going back and forth. I mean, it's loud. It's everything you could think of in terms of a fist fight. And so we're fighting and everything else. She's out of the room. At this point, my roommate is like, what is going on? He's right outside of my room, right in the door as Claxton and I are fighting. And he goes to the room right next to us to get a few other guys to come and get Claxton. So he goes there, he gets them, they come back in, and they pull Claxton off from on top of me. This point, obviously, as you can imagine, people are waking up. What is going on, right? All this chaos. And so he goes back to his room. He's flipping out. I go down to where we put her at, and our phones are starting to blow up now, right? Because people are saying, what is going on? Like, what's happening? I'm talking to the other cadet and looking at each other and basically saying, okay, look, we've got to make the right call here, right? We got to call our squadron commander or the cadet squadron commander, work our way up the chain so that we can call our squadron commander and let them know what's going on, right? So this is 2 o'clock in the morning. We start going up our chain of command, letting them know what's going on. In my mind at this time, and even the other ones, I'm pissed, but I'm not in any position to think like, oh my God, we're going to get grilled or anything like that. And so we wait with her. Our squadron commander comes. We go back to the squadron to meet with him. And I mean the actual officer, so not just the cadet run. I mean the actual guy who's in charge of our squadron. You can imagine how upset he was, right? That he had to drive back on base to come deal with this. So he comes up to the squadron, call the squadron to attention, go up to the room. We also called security forces because, again, this is just kind of normal protocol. Let security forces know what was going on. What that triggered is kind of the base police to come. Also the paramedics. The paramedics came, and they're with her, and they're trying to get her conscious. I think they're doing kind of like I don't know if it's like a pneumonia type of thing to wake her up. And they're waking her up, asking her what happened. So this whole ordeal, begins to kind of unravel. Ultimately, they take her just for evaluation. So the paramedics take her. We go back up to the squadron to meet our squadron commander and report in. He asked us to write a report to security forces. And so we're writing a report of everything that happened that night, everything that occurred, and everything else. So we write that, we give it to him. At that point, our squadron commander tells us straight up, I mean, right there on the spot, you guys are restricted to base. You have no rank. You have not. I mean, so I mean, and this is kind of a point of contention. It's like, wait a second. At this point, are you blaming us? Like, hold on. You don't even know what happened, and it was just a hard stop, hard freeze. So at that moment, that night, it was kind of like a pseudo. You're rankless, and you're restricted till we figure this out. Okay, cool. So after we're done writing the reports and everything else, I went with another cadet back to my squadron commander and said, "Hey, I know we're restricted and everything else. Is it possible to see if she's okay and if she needs a ride to go back home?" And he allowed us to do that as long as we still went to the football game, right? So this is still going on. So myself and another cadet, around like, I don't know, 6 in the morning at this point, 7 in the morning, drove to the hospital, checked in on her. She had no memory of anything that was happening for that night.
Oh my God.
She kind of had this foggy, maybe a 1, 2, 3 second trailer, but didn't know.
Does she remember like going out?
Yeah, she remembers going out, and then she remembers sitting down in the car, and then she remembers kind of blacking in and out of sitting down in the car. She remembers seeing a toilet. She remembered getting in the bed, like being on in the bed. And that's where things are kind of weird, because she said, "I thought Claxton was in there, but I wasn't sure." And then I woke up in this other person's room, and they said the paramedics are coming, and I don't know. And they asked her if she needed a rape kit at the hospital. So, normal protocol type of things. I mean, luckily she didn't, because we were able to intervene at that time. But so we picked her up, and we were kind of, I mean, how do you tell someone like, "Hey, you were almost assaulted," right? Like how do you say that, right? So basically it was more, when you're feeling a little bit better and sobered up, we'll definitely let you know everything that happened. And so
This
took her to her.
is Claxton. I just want to make him famous for being the rapist that he is. Can I also intervene and say that he is currently playing football? Okay, still
He's not playing football anymore.
No.
No,
Oh, okay. Because
no.
I saw that he was at Acorn or
Yeah, so that's
Alcorn
Jamil.
State
That's
Uni-
Jamil Cooks. Yeah,
Oh
Jamil
my
Cooks
gosh.
got the full
Okay.
ride to Alcorn. Yeah.
So many rapists, not enough. I can't keep track of all of them. So can you tell me what he's doing right now currently?
Jamil Cooks?
No, I'm
Or
saying
Claxton? Claxton?
Claxton dude.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, currently, I'm not quite sure.
Okay, but he did get convicted.
Yes, he did get convicted.
Okay, thanks to you, Eric. Thank you.
No, it was a lot of people, but
Okay.
But yeah,
But you were one
I'm
of
glad I
them.
could help. Yeah, I'm glad I could help.
You prevented a sexual assault. Like, you're a hero.
Yeah. So we picked her up, dropped her off, went to the game. At this point, obviously the squadron knows what's going on, right? So when we were coming to the squadron, everyone's like, "Yo, what is happening?" Right? Very awkward. Why is it awkward? Because Claxton is in my squadron. And so this isn't like, oh, I don't see Claxton. This is like, I live with Claxton. Yeah, exactly, right? And so we go through the whole Air Force Army game and everything. I mean, things are going so quick and from moment to moment. I still haven't even called OSI at this point, right? Like, this is like, I'm with people all the time. Obviously, we were able to neutralize potential threat. And for those who are military listening, we didn't kill him, but I mean, we were able to avoid a threat. And so after the Army game and after all of the shindigs that were happening, then I was able to begin to reach out to OSI. So made a call, was told that they would call me back, so we could sit down, we could talk. And so a few days go by. I'm brought in to pretty much tell them everything that happened, right? To write it down and everything else. At this point, I'm told that Munson's no longer there. And now this is my first time being involved with Special Agent Enos. With Special Agent Enos, every agent kind of has their own, I guess you could say, methodology on how they want to pursue different things or how they want to handle different cases and so forth, right? Kind of discretion up to the agent. And so I'm telling him exactly what happened. I write down my statement. I mean, just like a normal encounter with OSI. I mean, nothing really popping off. And so he takes it, and I'm telling him also about any other follow-ups from the other cases. Well, at this point, Enos is asking like, "Oh, you got a lot of stuff," and to kind of so things don't get too confusing, I'll fill this gap in right now. I would only later, after being discharged, find out that Enos did not know that I was working with OSI. And so I always thought it was kind of odd. And he said he always thought it was kind of odd because he's like, I didn't know why, like, I mean, you kind of knew what we were doing already. And I just thought, oh, okay. And I had told him and followed up with Munson on what I was telling him. And so when he went back to check in on my CI file, well, Munson never recorded the way he was supposed to record a CI's documentation. So when Special Agent Enos went back into the system, because I ended up saying, yeah, I told Munson this, he was like, oh, and all he could find was a date of the first day we met, but even then didn't have my information. So even like before officially signing up, he didn't even record the fact that I was telling him that I didn't know anything about the sexual assault that happened to my friend, or the spice or anything like that, even though I wrote a statement, but he didn't record it. So for your listeners, so the reason I'm bringing this up now is because it would take the DOD Inspector General investigation that happens in 2016 to reveal the fact that OSI was not recording their documents properly, right? And so I didn't know that, especially the Enos didn't know that. None of us knew that. So moving now from 2011 into going into 2012, well, in between this period, he said, hey, I couldn't find your stuff. Tell me, everything that you told Munson. And do you have any information on these other cases? So Enos was a very active agent. Enos had other cases in which victims came up to him and said, feeling defeated, basically letting him know that, hey, my perpetrator's on the football team and you can't touch these guys. He's a well-known football player. He's this, he's that. I mean, kind of the obstacles of the environment were now apparent to Enos because they didn't even feel comfortable or think that they would get anything from reporting. So as we're talking about what just happened with Claxton, now Claxton's case is official, right? Now we're coming after it. Now we're coming after it with what happened earlier that year, right? Because now we can, right? Now we have the ability to not violate her wishes because it's an official case that's opened up because of something completely different. So we've got a full investigation going on now with Claxton. After updating Enos with these other cases, it's like, okay, well, I think there might be enough to start with this one, which would be Asher Clark, running back, NFL prospect, poster child of the academy. Well, there's enough evidence here. Let's start opening up this case. Well, as we started saying it or going through the evidence and going through things and then continuously revving up, right? Prior to Enos, I was meeting with OSI probably about 1 to 3 times a month, right? Checking in and giving stuff. When it came with Enos, at this point, I am, almost every night. I mean, we are getting after it. I'm writing reports in the car while we're going from point A to point B. We are meeting at undisclosed locations. He is, and this really is just a testament to the type of agent that you're working with, because now he's like, hey, I put it up to my chain, who put it up to my chain, who put it up to the chief of staff at the time, because there was so much information coming out at once about so many different things. And so I'm thinking, okay, cool. You just don't know where to go and what I got to do. Meanwhile, just to keep it organized for everybody, this is all going on with OSI. The other half now, because of the Claxton fight, is, well, the rules and the incident that happened, well, now I'm about to get in trouble for leaving base when you're not supposed to. I'm not worried. At this point, I'm not upset or thinking I'm going to be kicked out or anything like that. Anything that's going on in terms of the disciplinary actions going on in my squadron, I'm telling Enos, and he's on the same page, right? And so my squadron commander, we call it AOC for short. So if people are tracking, squadron commander and AOC are interchangeable. AOC stands for Air Officer Commander. He's the permanent party member of our squadron. He's the boss.
What was his name?
Major Granostowski. Right, Granostowski, right? Real hard-nosed kind of guy. Aside from all the OSI things, there was actually an equal opportunity investigation in my squadron. We had the smallest squadron in the wing. There was a lot of other issues going on with this AOC. In fact, there was a report that our squadron had a fear of retribution because of this AOC, unrelated. But anyway, so so the AOC begins to go down the disciplinary actions, right? Again, I'm not concerned. I'm not freaking out. I'm keeping Enos up to date. We've got all these different cases going on at the time. We're also now beginning to understand the gravity of Jabril Cooks. We're also beginning to find the linkages between different party homes within the Springs. We're also finding information that there's going to be a big party coming up, and at this party, there's talk now of roofies that are going to be involved, right? Naturally, the Asher Clark case, for example, that happened in March of 2011, and I told Munson. So to kind of give you guys a compare and contrast, Munson didn't do anything with it, right? And why didn't he do anything? He said, well, only your testimony and your evidence alone isn't enough to get the NFL prospect guy to get looked at for anything. We're gonna need more than that. Well, I didn't have more than that. The difference with Enos is he said, okay, well, how do we bolster then your credibility? Let's get you polygraphed. So I got polygraphed, right? And I got polygraphed to, one, make sure I'm telling the truth. Two, to make sure that I didn't tell anyone what's going on. And three, that the information that I'm saying specifically about Asher Clark and everyone else is accurate. Now that polygraph had to occur because the superintendent of the academy, General Mike Gould, and now other officials within the chain of command of the Air Force, the chief of staff and everything else, well, there's a lot of stuff that's about to come down at the academy, right? So these guys are being read in on what's happening. The polygraph came in because they didn't believe just based off of the information alone, so we had to add credibility. So this is kind of your first hint that, well, don't you think that the leader would just be like, okay, do what you guys got to do? Well, they wanted more than that. So, okay, cool. We gave it to them. So as we're getting closer into kind of your December 2011 timeframe, I'm getting punished. And by punished, I mean I'm starting to get crucified by the disciplinary action. I'm thinking, okay, we have this process that if you're going to get in trouble for any offense, big or small, that you go to what's called a scrub. And a scrub stands for Squadron Review Board or Squadron Review Committees. Basically, your squadron's looking at whatever offense it is to evaluate it, right? And so let Enos know, hey, we've got at this point, I think we were in the upwards of about 20 separate cases for different reasons, and now the sexual assault tallies are starting to open up a little bit more. And mind you, I believe part of that was because talk of Claxton was starting to get around the school. So naturally, there was more or less of an opportunity to relate and get one-on-one with maybe another victim, because you're talking about what's happening at the school, right? So if you're assaulted, maybe I wouldn't, or anyone wouldn't know, but because now we're talking about this, you might feel more or less open to say she's not the only one, for example, or something like that, right? Which gives someone like me the ability to be like, okay, we got another one, like here's another lead, here's another avenue, right? So that's kind of what's going on at this period of time that's building these cases. The reason it didn't build before is just because there was no opportunity. I mean, I'm not going to walk up to someone and be like, oh, were you assaulted? You mean, kind of defeats purpose. Yeah, exactly. So,
But
so this
how did
began.
people feel comfortable telling you as an informant that they've been assaulted in now this situation that
So it
it's
really
all over the school.
depends, right? So one of the things that we kind of did, and this is kind of one of the things that, I try not to get into too much tradecraft because again, I'm not trying to give anyone a black eye or anything like that. But one of the, I guess, overall things that we would do is that we would get in, if there was information that maybe you were assaulted, like maybe one female that we know was assaulted also gave us some type of clue, whether it be in casual conversation or maybe her assaulter walked by and she says a comment like she's not the only one or something. Well, naturally, what statistics show us is that a victim will more than likely know someone else that's a victim, or at least have reason to know that someone else is a victim. So we would be able to kind of work off of that. If that was the case, or if we knew that she was a victim for sure, well, one of the ways we would start to kind of build the case is we want to make sure that what she's saying, there's some type of validation from her circle of friends, right? So we would kind of work it where we would get close to her, and we would get close to her immediate close friends, and then we would get close to their friends, right? So kind of like this 3-layer method. And what we did different is that we didn't just do that with the victim. We also did it with the perpetrator. So we would also get close to him, his circle of friends, and his kind of 3rd-layer circle of friends. So that's that. I think that's kind of like the defining or the distinction between all the other stuff, normal policies of reporting, and what we were doing is that it wasn't just one-sided. We were looking at both, and we were getting close to both. So for me personally, man, it was a very
It's crazy how you did all this for free.
it was a lonely, I mean, well, I and I feel like I'm going to give everyone like this idea, like, man, he wants to quit a lot, but I did because one, it's hard to be at the academy just to begin with. It's harder to be at the academy doing this, and I could leave at any point in time. I was not obligated to stay, but it was really hard to think. Okay, I mean, she just had a part of her ripped away, and she doesn't have the option to say, you know what, I'm just going to act like that didn't happen. She doesn't have the option to walk away. I do, right? And I thought, okay, well, how much of a coward would I be if I walked away and she can't, right? She didn't have a choice to, right? And to look back and think, man, what if I did something that could have helped her? I mean, and not only that, when we graduate, there's never been a case where it's, oh, this guy only did this one time. Am I becoming an enabler now because he's going to go in to the big Air Force and who knows what kind of things he's going to do in there, right? And so I cannot express enough the multiple times I wanted to stop. My grades were taking a hit, right? I was spread so thin, I didn't even know what was going on. And it felt almost like you're losing a part of yourself because you're wearing a lot of hats, right? Like, oh, let me go in here and hear how this dude did this thing or is going to do this thing. And act cool with it. Like, oh yeah, bro, like, yeah, go after it, right? And then let me go to her circle and then, hear the story that she talks about or she doesn't even talk about. And then the friends and how that's growing, right? And to do all of that and at the same time think, okay, well, like make sure I don't fail out. I definitely wanted to quit. But I mean, it was just something I didn't feel would be good to do, would be good to quit. So I stuck out what best I could. So
Your
yeah,
mom raised you right. That's what it
yeah.
is.
Well, my mom's a Latina. She would slap me around a bit here and
Exactly.
there.
If
Yeah,
you went home, I feel like your mom would be pissed. Your sisters would be pissed.
yeah, and not only that, because like I don't want this to be. And I said this from the beginning, and I mean it now. At the end of the day, the heroes come from those who had the courage to say, here's my story. The only thing that we were trying to do is give them a platform to be heard. That's it. I mean, that's all it comes
Fix
down
the
to.
problem.
Right. That's all we were trying to do. And the nature of what we were doing wasn't meant to be known. Right. I didn't say yes, and I didn't keep going, and I didn't think that what I was doing would be known to any of them. I didn't want it to be known to any of them. I just thought that, if I could do something good and we graduate and go along our ways, I mean, great. I mean, that was my aim. So as we're in December and things are getting kind of hot and heavy now, it's kind of like these two layers where now my AOC, my squadron commander, Major Granastowski's, he's starting to come after all the guys that were involved with the Claxton incident. Not worried, but I'm like, man, this guy is really just like, he is deranking us. He is just, coming after it. He asked Special Agent Enos in these efforts, right, to is there a profile or any packet or information on all these cadets, including Eric? And Enos was a little caught off guard, thinking, okay, I don't know what your deal is, dude, but obviously, no, we're investigating Claxton. Like, there's nothing on the other guys. Well, that just wasn't him. And mind you, I walked around with an air of, I was still laughing. I wasn't like, I'm about to get kicked out, because I knew what was going on, right? And I think that kind of bothered him a little bit, because it seemed like I was coming across very cocky and like, oh, you really don't care. You know what I mean? Like, you don't understand just how serious this is. And to me, I'm thinking, no, I definitely do. I'm just,
And you're
sorry,
thinking
sir.
he knows what you're doing.
Yeah, like
I'm
not like thinking, okay, oh my God, like, let me tell you the real story. I'm thinking, I mean, sorry, you don't want to see me like a weeping willow. I don't know what, like, what am I supposed to do? And things were so heavy that I didn't have time to mope around, because there's cases and cases and cases that are growing. And so anyway, well, he when he doesn't get any information on me, right? Well, Enos didn't think twice about it. I didn't think twice about it. And we kept doing what we were doing. And it turns out, well, he called the OSI JAG office, right? And one of the ways that the I guess investigative process starts, and this goes into the discretion of the commanders when it comes to sexual assaults, is that as a commander, if someone in your squadron had opened a case and OSI is investigating, whatever report OSI releases is going to go to you as a squadron commander, right? As the person with discretion. So it's not unheard of to have a commander check in with the investigation. It is unheard of to have them circumvent the system and go to the JAG side. So when he did that, he went to the JAG side and asked them, hey, is there anything on Eric Thomas? Well, what they did, and they're not thinking, I mean, they're similar to me, thinking, oh, okay, he's probably read in on what he's doing. Well, they punched my name in, right? And every statement and file that I was giving to OSI since March, right? Since October, since January, the whole time, came to him. So he had access to it. And when he had access to it,
that's when he knew that you were working for OSI.
So what he saw were statements that I gave to OSI. That's what he got.
He didn't see that you were working.
No, he didn't, because he didn't ask for my CI docket, right? There's kind of like these two dockets where if we have these sets of investigations that are going on, all my statements are going to go to that case. Mm-hmm. And then if we have cases with this other one, it'll be kind of like another number, like case number 123 for Claxton, case number 321 for Cooks. So if he's asking for my name related to Claxton, he's going to get all of my statements talking about Claxton. He would have to ask about just my designation with OSI to get my CI. Like, he's not going to get my polygraph test, and he's not going to get all that stuff because that's in the CI folder. So he's asking as it relates to Claxton, what are his statements? So that's exactly what he got. I didn't know this. Enos didn't know this. And he got a to put it, I guess an understanding on this for everyone. He had unredacted statements from me talking about Claxton's cases for months in detail, that he would later in January, during my disciplinary review in the squadron, provide to 10 other cadets while the investigation is going on. None of us knew that this was happening. So now that we go, let's say we go to January of 2012, where all the cadets that were involved with Claxton are now getting punished.
Wow.
Throughout this punishment, all the other cadets were reviewing the statements they gave to security forces from the night that we wrote the statements when we called Major Granostowski about the fight and the victim. Well, with me, he had the documents from OSI, completely different. And from those documents, this was the first time that I and even Enos was being told that, oh, on March, there was alcohol in the room. Didn't know about that. There was a female in the room. Didn't know about that. So what you had was this collection of information that was related to the Claxton case that I wrote. So these statements, to put in perspective for everybody, these are the statements that would ultimately get me disenrolled and discharged. And I'll repeat it. It is my statements that I wrote that would later get me discharged. It wasn't someone else's statements. It wasn't that I got caught. It was my own words stating on this date I left, doing this thing with Claxton and saw this thing. That's what got me disenrolled. So on that one day, the threshold for cadets to be disenrolled is 200 demerits. Within 4 years, you can only get 200 demerits. Up until that point, I think it was like 100, 115, something like that, which included a basic prank that gave me like 50 or 70 alone. At that moment, I got 316 demerits. It's enough demerits to almost kick 2 cadets out at once, right?
Oh my God.
So I didn't know that was coming. I mean, I had no idea, and Enos had no idea. In fact, it's an illegal action to provide unredacted investigative statements during an open investigation. So not only did he do something just to try to get me out of there, but he also did something that could jeopardize the entire Claxton case, and all of that could have been tossed out, or manipulated some way and somehow that it wouldn't have even gone to court, right? And so when I walked out of that room, I was like, oh my God, like, what just happened? You know, I'm thinking he's going to ask me about what happened. I'm going to kind of think, okay, well, OSI, like, go talk to them. Like, I can't say anything kind of thing. Definitely had no idea. Neither did Enos about what he did, because we didn't know that he circumvented the system to get it from the JAG. So at that point, that was the first point I thought, okay, like my knees shook a little bit, like, because no one said in the fine print that I was going to get, X amount of demerits. Well, being that it's now January of 2012 and we have over 30 cases going on, well, we said, okay, well, let's, we're going to handle it. They're talking to the superintendent. Everyone else on the higher up chain of command knows what's going on. Obviously, this guy has a vindictive whatever. So what really matters is the 3-star general. What really matters is the commandant of cadets. Those are the guys that really matter. I mean, those are the ones that sign off if you're getting discharged or let go or whatever. So the plan was that we're going to move you to another squadron once we have some of these other cases under control. We don't want to do too much, and this is the other thing. You don't want to do too much because then you give your cover away, right? Like if I'm getting preferential treatment, well, then it's like, why is he getting treatment, but all the other guys he was with aren't? So there was like these dynamics that was like, okay, well, at the end of the day, we've got you. But we've got now 30 cases open going after it. We don't want to jeopardize everything else by manipulating your case or telling them, oh, you can't get punished. It almost kind of helped, right? Because it kind of validated that, oh, he's not working for OSI because he's getting punished, right? So it almost, in a way, ironically, it wasn't planned. I don't want to confuse anyone. It's just so happened that it made a better cover. So anyway, Operation Gridiron came to be because there was so many cases that were going on and opening up with Enos towards the end of 2011 that we said, okay, well, if we bring in one person, it's a small school, it's a population of 4,000 cadets. You start investigating, especially someone on the football team, right? I mean, there was a lot, but you start investigating someone on the football team, well, people are going to talk, right? And if people start talking, well, it's all the work that we did. They're going to go and they're going to collaborate and try to get their stories line. I mean, we're gonna pretty much infect all these cases that were being worked on, and we're gonna tip them off, right? And so this was an idea that said, okay, well, what can we do to prevent that from happening, and think shock and awe, right? So the idea was, well, at first it was like, well, maybe we'll have a party, get these guys to come, and have an undercover. And I was like, yeah, it was like, that's definitely not going to happen. There was so many things that
Bring
was
some
reasons why that
girls.
wasn't happening. Yeah, there was like, we were like,
Warn them that they could potentially be raped.
No, there was even talk about getting, I don't even know if I should say this, I'll say this. There was talk about getting different agents from Peterson that were attractive OSI agents to get them to act like they were civilian girls, to get them to go to some parties, right? Because then we thought, oh, well, yeah, this is going to be like, the worst night of your life.
Sounds like a lot of liability for the Air Force.
Yeah, so that's why it didn't happen, right? So so after kind of like brainstorming, it was like, okay, well, what we're going to do then is an undisclosed moment. We're going to let everyone that knows or that we're investigating, we're going to let the squadron commanders know that they need to report immediately to the OSI office. And we're going to do it where we do everyone. And we're going to cover it by having people who aren't even involved. And I kind of felt bad because there were people that were called down to the OSI office that are like, or golden, like, I never even drink kind of thing, right? And all of a sudden they're going to OSI and they're going with like, a star football player. And they're like, what happened? I didn't even go to a party. I don't know these people. And so it was more meant to be misleading, so that if, as they're looking around,
being investigated.
as they're looking around, they're thinking, okay, like, it makes sense that he's here, but why is she here? Like, I don't even know who that is, so it kind of threw everyone off. And what we did was, we did it all at once. It involved over 50 cadets. There was, the foundations of the academy were shook, because there was people from almost every squadron. There's 40 squadrons at the academy that were being brought into. Everyone from somebody you don't know to, oh, he's on the billboard for Falcon football. So as they were brought in, this is what's termed as Operation Gridiron, is that everyone was brought in at one time and filtered into a few conference rooms where they were under watch, so that nobody can get their stuff together or anything like that. And one by one brought in into the interview rooms. And this was so big that we had to get approval, one, from your up your chain. In fact, even the Chief of Staff of the Air Force was briefed on what was about to happen, not only because of the gravity of it, because there's no way this is not going to some way, somehow come out in the media, right? Because this is a big deal. And so everyone was read in, had to go ahead, had the green light. It comes again. I get brought in too. I'm not worried. I mean, this is the whole idea. But my squadron commander, when he was telling me about it, he's like, hey, kind of like, gotcha now, huh? And I'm thinking, all right, dude, like I knew this was happening before you knew this was happening. Like, I was right in, like, I don't know, you're like, all right.
Thanks
so we went down there.
Over.
Yeah. Went down there. And I say this because I guess like people think it's interesting, but this is, I guess, one of, like, if you ever watch like a spy movie or anything like that, like when you get wired up, this is one example, because it's more public knowledge. It's like, yeah, you walk in, I walk in last, everyone's being filtered in, I take a left, everyone takes a right, there's an equipment guy in there and he seats you up, and you go back in there and you kind of put your head down like, oh God, what's happening? I'm looking around and like I had to take a water break to go tell, it's like, dude, like no one's gonna say anything if like you got agents in here. Like, why am I even wearing this if like you got agents? Like, no one's talking. So, I had to reorganize the character of the room. Got a few more, conversations and things like that was going on. So this was a big deal. At the end of that night, going into the next day, people were shook because the guys that thought had no clue that they were being investigated, guys that were like, it's not even on their radar, right?
Wow.
That were going down to people they thought that opened their mouths, different females, and threatening them, right? So now you had moments of these guys, and this is something we didn't even know was going to happen, but Jamil Cooks is one of them, where he went down to someone in his squadron with Anthony Daniels and a few other people, because they thought that this person leaked to OSI, right? Because
They
some of
raped the same person.
they did, yeah, but they were trying to figure out, how did they know? So I mean, the details that they knew, they were telling them, look, we know the color of the shirt you wore that night, we know what you were drinking, we know what you were doing, we know that you said this. So they were trying to put the pieces together on how did they know so much from so long ago, and have so many accurate points about it. So they were trying to figure it out, and they were panicked, right? And so
This is Tony Daniels right here.
yeah. So because they were so panicked, they were going to different rooms, and in one in particular, threatening one of the females they thought that said something, and ironically enough, after knowing this, had to tell Enos that, hey, here's something completely unforeseen. She's feeling threatened because they went to her room to make sure she doesn't open her mouth. They think it's her. So things got really, really crazy, to the point that in February and March of 2012, OSI made a request to Cook's squadron commander to have him removed from the squadron for not only threatening different people, but for also, there was another potential assault that almost occurred, right? So this dude was that cocky that he was like, oh yeah, like, I know I'm under investigation, but I'm gonna get away with it, and I'm gonna try to assault someone else, right?
Who do you think you are?
Yeah, so I mean, that kind of gives you, and to give your listeners, and from my perspective, going through this whole process, I mean, I lost a lot of friends, and my name has been torn up all up and down in the media, and everyone, you're a snitch and you're this and that, and to me, I'm thinking like, no, listen, like, this wasn't like, oh, let me curry favor or let me say something to save my skin. That was never the I could have walked away. This wasn't about somebody that I hated, or like I'm a mean girl and I'm gonna get back at someone. This wasn't like, let me go and be a snitch on whatever. These are federal crimes. Like, it's a federal crime, one. And not only is it a federal crime, but it's a type of crime that is affecting the people within our squadron. It's like me going and shooting my teammate, right? Like, we're on the same team, are we not? You know what I mean? Like, why is this even a question? Why is it even like a debate? And so, the persona that began to come from that, or at least after that, is that he's a snitch, right? Like, the guy we thought we knew, that's not him. And so,
yeah, but people are always going to talk regardless of
yeah,
what you do.
yeah,
So
yeah, it does.
You did the right thing, and you upheld the Air Force values.
I tried.
The least you could do, because that's what you thought you were doing. You were serving your country. You were protecting the females in your squadron in the Air Force Academy. You knew this was a problem,
Yeah.
You wanted to do the right thing.
So in 2012, all this is going on. Cases are up and are crazy. I'm still getting punished, mind you, but I'm not worried because I'm talking to Enos, and everyone's on the same page. Well, as we go forward from the 2012 to the summer of 2012, going to the fall and so forth, well, cases are either going to court. I go to the witness stand. Things are moving in that direction with all these other cases. Some people are voluntarily leaving. Pretty much kind of the fallout of Operation Gridiron is occurring. In the back of my head, the normal disenrollment process for demerits would be about 2 months, start to finish. Right? You messed up here, within 2 months you're gone. Right? I not only was I not worried, this is like 6 months in. After getting over 300 demerits, there's also, and Adam touched on this as well, that you also have confinements, which is basically dressing up in service dress and sitting in a room. And for every, one confinement is equivalent of 2 hours of sitting in a room where you have no headphones or electronics. You got to do your homework, right? And just full, for those who don't know what service dress is, it's like the fancy blues with white gloves type of thing. You'd wear it to like a wedding or a funeral or what have you. So I was given over 290 confinements for the punishment, right? So that's the equivalent of about 500 hours of just sitting in a room. On top of that, there's also a punishment called tours. Tours is walking in pretty much a 10 by 10 square, again, in full service dress, white gloves with a mock M16, and tours are given for any alcohol violations. For example, not reporting the alcohol of the Claxton case.
That?
Yeah. So I was given 99 tours. So on one hand, and confinements and tours can only be served on certain weekends. And so, pretty much if I didn't know that, okay, well, I'm not too worried because of OSI and everything else, every weekend would just be tours and confinements and tours. And mind you, I still did some because it would look odd, right? Like, oh, dude, like even other cadets would be like, hey, man, I think it's terrible, but like, are you just gonna like not do anything? So at that point, it was a balance between working the cases and things that were going on with that, and also serving confinements and tours. So, at this point, my academy experience, like I envied those who are like, hey, I'm going to go to my sponsor family or go to a cabin or something like that, because I didn't have that, right? Like for me, it was going to be either an OSI directed op or I'm marching tours or what have you. But again, I wanted to quit. I had an option to walk away, but it was really hard to walk away when one of the victims is also marching tours with one of her perpetrators, right? Like, how do you walk away from that? She can't walk away.
Why
So
did that happen? Is
yeah,
this
that
a
happens
side
often.
tangent?
There's not a policy, right, to say that as this case is being investigated, and if you're punished, which involves tours or confinements, there's nothing that says you have to separate. So there are victims that you can't escape it, right? Unlike other campuses where it's like, maybe let me get out of this class. You can't drop a class. Maybe it's like, let me, go out with the girls for a weekend or just, get away. You can't do that, right? So if you're a victim at the academy, oftentimes your assailant, you're going to have a class with them and you're not going to get out of it. You're going to march with them. If they're in your squadron, you're going to be right behind them in formation. You're going to sit right next to them at breakfast. And oftentimes there's not much that can happen or that can change that. So it's really hard for me to walk away, right?
Definitely. I just want to interfere with
Yeah.
a couple of statistics. In 2013, there were 26,000 sexual assault reported cases in the entire military. Eric here tells me that only 1% or less than 1% were actually convicted of those
Yeah, so you have about a
26,000.
less than 1%. Yeah.
Less than 1%.
And to be clear, convicted from the base or from the service. So you're going to have convictions that are going to happen from a civilian incident, right? That'll raise the conviction number. But if it's a in-house, if you will, conviction number, yeah, you're going to have less than 1% of your reports.
In Adam's case, he was saying that the best way to seek justice for your sexual assault and to report it would be off base to a civilian police department, not
yeah,
on base.
probably, yeah. And that's just because of the commander discretion and the military rules that
Politics.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, there's more politics that play a part. But anywho, and I'm getting, if your listeners like nodding off, I call it season one. I think I use a Netflix analogy, right? Like this is season one, and then after all this is kind of season two.
We can totally do part two if you want to split it up and say this is what happened to me, and we could do part two of how I've been fighting it. Do you want to do that?
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. Probably
That's
keep
probably
people like
better.
from nodding off. So let me finish. Let me finish season
Yeah,
one then.
let's do it.
So where am I? So it's 2012. Things are hot and heavy. Yeah, things are going forward. I'm still talking to Enos. There's kind of there's these tier. Best way I could put it is that if you get in trouble for demerits, you're being looked at being disenrolled. You're going to go from your squadron to your group, from your group to the vice commandant, and then from the vice commandant to the superintendent, and then you're gone. And so all along those ways are your opportunity, excuse me, your opportunity to plead your case essentially, right? Plead your case to your squadron, and if they're like, oh, it's too egregious, we're going to recommend disenrollment. Then it would go to the next tier, and it would go to your group, and it's too egregious. Then it's going to go to the vice commandant. There would be a military review committee. So that's comprised of actual officers, right? Permanent party members. So a major or a colonel or what have you, that will sit down, look at the record, and either recommend disenrollment to the superintendent or some other action, right? So that's the normal process, right? All I had up until that point was I had spoken to the group commander in February. So that would be the next tier. Again, talk to Enos, hey, what do we, kind of went to the next step. We're working on it. We're talking to the vice commandant. We're talking to the superintendent. Again, at the end of the day, those are the ones that matter. And he's right. I mean, and I don't think even to this day, he wasn't kind of BSing me or anything. I mean, I have records and documents to show that. So he's briefing them and letting them know what's going on. So as we move, 2012, that first semester, another reason why I'm thinking I'm okay is because, hey, I just got my pilot slot. Obviously, OSI and in my record isn't what it might seem on the surface, because it's a very competitive spot. Just kind of how Adam was telling you, that's what he wanted to do, right? Well, I got a pilot slot. I thought, awesome. I had my eyes fixed, so I had PRK'd on my eyes. I was going through that in the middle of all this as well. Pilot qualified in terms of my physicals and things like that, and I got a pilot slot. And I was talking to one of my really good friends, and we're getting our reporting date. So I had my reporting date. I'm supposed to go to Vance, Oklahoma. It's like March 16th. I remember March 16th, 2014, going to Vance, Oklahoma. So that means after graduation, I've got a year that I'll just be kind of associated to a squadron. I'm talking to my best friend, and he and I would always have kind of like these dorky moments where we would just spend time watching, fight videos or something like that. And he's like, hey, I'm going to get my orders changed so we can go through pilot training together. I'm like, yes, like, let's go, man. So he goes and he gets his pilot training changed, his pilot date, his reporting date. He's going to the same base. And I'm like, this is awesome. Like, what can what more can you ask for, right? Like, and so we're going from March into the summer. And at this point, I would later find out that a lot of the cases from Operation Gridiron and whatnot, it would have kept ballooning, but Special Enos and OSI was ordered by the Air Force Command. So nothing with the Academy, the actual Air Force Command structure told them, ease up, right? Back off of Operation Gridiron. So basically, there were more cases we could have gone down, but we didn't. So we were pretty much going into the summer of 2012, wrapping up on the cases that we already had. Again, no big deal on my end. At this point, I'm not worried about being disenrolled. Of course, my squadron commander, my AOC, he hates me, but I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know what more to tell you, man. Of course, the group commander is just distant enough that he doesn't know the details or that I could even say anything, but I'm still there, right? This is like 7-8 months at this point. I'm really not concerned, and I'm still talking to Enos, and everything is fine. We go through our summer programs. I went to Florida to a base there. It was a fighter base to spend about 3 or 4 weeks shadowing a pilot there, knowing what they do. I took a class, took survival training. I spent some weeks in the mountains doing different survival type things. got back, hey, now it's August, starting up on the new year at this point. The Claxton, all the cases are going, it's going to convictions. We got through our Article 32s, got done reporting. I'm also one of the commanders for basic training. So it's almost that, over here, I'm this terrible cadet that's about to get kicked out, right? And then over here, look, I got my pilot slot. I'm going to Vance, Oklahoma. Over here, OSI and all the work that we put in and all the craziness is starting to settle down, and we're starting to see the fruits of that. And then over here, well, the semester is about to start up again. So, okay. Going into the summer, or coming out of the summer, going into the next semester, there was nothing on my radar saying anything that would warn me. So the Enos, he was, I wasn't really talking to Enos much because, again, summer programs are different. There wasn't anything to report on, really. I wasn't getting anything as far as from the other cases. There's really not much to say. There were a few instances which I did meet with OSI, but again, definitely wasn't like every single day going after it or anything like that. Then August comes around and we're coming back to the school, getting ready to start. For me, it's my senior year now, right? And so getting ready to start the last year. And one of the things that was weird was that over the summer, at some point in time, Grant Ostowski, what he did was he resubmitted or reinitiated the original paperwork that took me to the group commander. And he literally copied and pasted, put it on another form. We called it a form 10. That's like your official punishment form. So you put it on another form again. All this happened, and I have the records. None of my signature is on any of this. He copy paste, put it through, started the system again. This time I didn't have a scrub, so I don't know, what happened there. Normal policy and protocol would mean if you do that, the squadron to the group, to the vice commandant, and so forth. Bypassed the squadron, went to the group. This time the group commander signs off and he says, take to the vice commandant, right? And I'm thinking, again, I had no idea any of this was going on. So the middle of August, I get, beginning of July, middle of August, I get a call telling me that I'm gonna have a MERC or a military review committee. So it's at the vice commandant. And I'm thinking, what's that vice commandant? Like, there was nothing, again, nothing was happening. There was nothing going on. Last thing I had was in February with the group. That was the last thing, right? Give a call to Special Agent Enos. He says, well, let me go ahead and check into it because I haven't heard anything. He goes, we were talking to the vice commandant and superintendent, nothing on this side. So I'm like, okay, well, they're telling me that I'm going to have a MERC on this day. And they're like, let me check into that. So Special Agent Enos, he goes and checks in, and he says, I'm not hearing anything. I don't know where it's coming from. I'm thinking, okay, this is weird. Then we get closer to that date, and one call doesn't get returned by Special Agent Enos. And I'm thinking, okay, not a big deal. Getting closer to that date, and 2 calls now. And I'm thinking, well, that's weird because like before, I could just, you guys were like calling me. And this time it was like 4 calls. Okay, well now, hey, I'm going to this MERC thing, and I'm trying to see if I could bring your name up to tell them, or if not, what do you want me to say? Finally, a few days before, he tells me, yeah, sorry about that. I was TY. I would later find out that he was being ordered by his commander to stop talking to me. Didn't know it at the time. And it wasn't his call. Special Agent Enos has been one of the biggest supporters all along the way. So I say, okay, well, here's my package that I'm taking. Have you heard anything? Like, is this like, should I be going to this? He's like, the last thing I heard was you were going to go to a hearing officer, which I was going to come with you to finally clear up the stuff with the vice commandant and the superintendent, but I don't know what happened, and I don't know what happened. So here I am. No one knows what's going on. Sharing my package. He says, hey, I'll get it cleared that I'll come to speak on your behalf. I'm like, okay, great. I feel a little bit better. Part of the MERC protocol is that if you're going to a MERC, you can get legal counsel. So it's not unheard of. And I thought, well, maybe that's probably a pretty good idea. So I found Skip Morgan in the Colorado Springs area, and he is a retired colonel from the academy, worked with OSI as a JAG. Perfect guy you could ask for something like that. Tell him, sir, here's what's going on. He thought I was crazy and thought it was like, what do you mean OSI? Like, I'm telling him everything that's going on. And he's like, okay, this is different, obviously. But if that's what OSI is saying, and you've got your text, don't delete anything just in case. And I'm like, roger that, so I don't delete anything. Okay, cool. I go and I tell before the MERC kicks off, I tell the person, kind of like the secretary of the commandant's office, when they're asking for your package and what you're going to provide to the board, you can bring in 2 character witnesses. And so one of my 2 character witnesses was going to be Special Agent Enos. And so I was telling her, ma'am, I don't know exactly what I can or cannot say, but this is going to be my character witness. And she's like, okay, you get, short description. I was like, that's the part. If you can call him, I'm sure he will let you know, but I can't tell you why I can't tell you, essentially. Of course, she thought it was weird, but she gave him a call, talked to him, said, okay, I'll put him down. He's going to be there. A few days later, it's the day of the MERC, the Military Review Committee. So I'm in Blues, and they don't allow your attorney or anything like that to come, which is weird, but okay. So I go and I'm sitting in the hall, and I'm looking around waiting for my Special Agent Enos character witness to show up. Okay, and I showed up about 45 minutes early. 30 minutes, send him a text, hey, sitting here, just waiting to, let you know where we're at. Come in, take a ride, I'm over here. 20 minutes, hey, just checking in to see if you're on your way. Nothing, okay. 10 minutes, I'm gonna go to the bathroom and make a phone call. Hey, are you gonna, are you on your way? He's like, hey, yeah, so my commander told me that we were gonna take another course of action. So I'm not gonna be able to make it. My entire argument, my entire everything was essentially Special Agent Enos is there. So I thought, okay. I walk in, I do my little report. First thing they asked me, where's your character witness? Sorry, he's not going to be able to make it. Okay, and they begin to go down. So you left an OT, had an OTF8 here. Why is that? I can't say anything about OSI, right? So it's that is I do that. There's no excuse for that. On this day, you had a female behind closed doors with alcohol. Didn't report that. Why is that? Yes, sir, that happened. I did that. Next day and the next day, and on this and this, and I could just own it. I mean, there was nothing I could say or do because I couldn't talk about OSI. So you can only imagine how that would go, where I mean, it was, do you not care? I mean, do you just want to leave? What's the deal? Like, you obviously don't care, and then just grilling you, never knowing anything about anything. Oh, you're involved with the Claxton case, huh? Because it was in your squadron. I heard you got in a fight. So you're getting in fights, you're drinking in the dorms, you've got you've got females behind closed doors. You're attached to all these other cases where all these other parties are going on. I mean, we should have gotten rid of you before you even came in. We should have never accepted. I mean, that was kind of like the demeanor of coming out here. You don't care, do you? That was, and I said that in a lot of the clips, because I mean, it really hurt, because the whole thing, right, was about caring. That's a tough one. Yeah.
That's bullshit.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Because they could have left. They could have, right? Yeah, that's a tough one. So, so I got grilled. And then Special Agent Enos, I would later find out that he was ordered not to speak on my behalf. So I didn't know it at the time, and in fact, he was ordered to cut all communication. So from that moment, he told me he was going to talk to the superintendent and everything else. I told my attorney. My attorney thought the same thing. This was in August of 2012, and I thought he did, right? I thought he did, because after the MERC, they voted 5-0 to disenroll. Yeah, I was like, oh my God. I made a FOIA request, and the FOIA request is basically asking, because at this point OSI wasn't talking to me anymore. So I tried to get all my documentation from OSI, and it came back no records found.
Are you
I thought
fucking kidding
I thought
me?
that's
Oh
impossible
my
because I
god.
was on the witness stand. There's no, you don't even have to think OSI. It's just common sense. My attorney told me, hey, look, if you were going to be kicked out, you would have been gone like a week after your merc. So maybe they are actually doing something. And it makes sense to me because he's right. 5-0 vote, I would have been gone. So he was saying, keep your head down, don't rock the boat. And obviously, and he's right, something must be happening because I'm still there and I'm not being told anything. So to me, I thought, okay, great. And so you go through September, October, November, don't hear anything from OSI, but I'm also not hearing anything from my chain of command. I'm still there, right? Nothing is in the wings of being let go. And so now it's 2013, right? Graduation year. Still have orders, still have everything. At this point, you know, my AOC is just like a confused bubble of everything. So much so that he wouldn't give me a command position. I know it's kind of weird to ask for, but you have to have it to graduate. You got to have certain like leadership credits. And so luckily enough, though, I knew the wing commander at the time. And so ironically enough, my senior year, I had one of the highest ranking positions in the entire wing. I outranked every cadet in my squadron. So again, terrible cadet that everyone is saying, but at the same time, I also have some of the highest rank. I'm really not I'm not a terrible cadet. And so going into the spring of 2013, after we get back from break, you know, tell my mom and stuff like that. But again, I'm not thinking, it doesn't make any sense that I'm there. So of course I think that, you know, whatever I thought was going on, whatever, I'm keeping my head down. I see the finish line, right? I've been there for 5 years. Like, see the finish line, everything's good. February comes around, and I get an email from the vice commandant, and I said, he said he wanted to talk to me. And I thought, I mean, my heart sunk because that's the last step. And I thought, what just happened? And at that point, I'm telling my lawyer, and he's like, just, you know, hey, at this point, tell him everything. He's kind of like, you know, to hell with the non-disclosure agreements. I don't know. He's basically, I don't know what's going on. Tell them everything you can. We're going to start working on getting everything that we can in the legal sense to get your documentation to show them. So I go and I talk to the vice commandant, and I said, sir, it's going to sound crazy, but I've been working with OSI, and I can give you details on all these cases, and I'm working to get more FOIA documentation. My first one came back, no records found. I have no clue. Call OSI, talk to OSI. I've been wired up. I've been involved with this case, involved with that case. The reason I'm here is because of my statements. I signed out. I'm not hiding anything. I mean, just putting it all at the table. Here's text messages, sir. Here's this. Here are phone records. Here are emails. Here's everything that I had. He's hearing me, and he goes, okay, but I need official documentation. Can you validate this? I'm like, call them. I'm trying to get it, but I don't know why I'm getting a no records found, but call them. I told him there's a reason why I had immunity when I went to the witness stand. I didn't ask for that. OSI asked for that. It was signed by General Gould. There's a reason why. Just talk to them. So I left. I went back to my room. He said, you know, I'll give you to COB today to send anything else. So I went back and I got on Verizon and got my phone records and sent everything. I couldn't go back to 2010 because it's 2013. It was like 2 years or something like that. So I can only go back 2 years. Gave him everything, highlighted, sir, here it is. This is all I have, and I'm working to get the other stuff. He goes, okay. He gets it. And I don't hear anything again. I wouldn't find out until later on again, like 2014 or 2013, when I would talk to Brandon, Special Agent Enos, that the commander for OSI went into the vice commandant's room, and when asked about everything I was saying, said, I don't know about that. He was never wired up. We weren't running him like that. He had, and went so far to say I was lying. And so again, the honor code of the academy is one of the quickest ways to get kicked out.
Corruption.
And so the commander told him I was lying. Well, when the commander goes back to the office and goes to special Enos and says, hey, you won't believe the story this kid was saying. Enos says, sir, that's why I was trying to go, because that did happen. And according to Enos, this is in his MFR, the OSI commander said, oh, I just told him that he was lying. He was like, no, sir, he did. Well, the commander never went back to fix the record. And why? Well, according to Enos, it's because he's all about rank. He's all about the promotion. He's not going to go and look like an idiot after saying all that. So he just didn't say anything. What's it to him, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know any of this. And so February, March, again, not hearing anything, keeping my head down, get my uniform sewn in, right? I wrapping up the hardest part of the classes, get invitations sent out to my grandparents, my family, and my friends. And then I didn't know it was coming. And so I got a knock. I was told I was being disenrolled that day. You know, and the whole process, at least for me, was just really tough, because it was one of those things where it's like, you know, hey, you're being disenrolled. You got to be gone by 1800. Adam was telling you that when he was leaving, right? It was a few days to go through the process. This was unheard of. I mean, how am I'm waking up, going to class, and you're telling me to change uniform. I'm going to the superintendent's office, and any out process that usually takes a week to do,
Yeah.
you're telling me I have to do it in a day. And so I was escorted all across the academy by my squadron AMT. At this point, I'm on the phone with my attorney. I'm panicking. I'm freaking out. I'm like, what is going on? You know, it was, you know, I don't know, like life has a funny way of just making things, like, you know, kind of hit twice, right? Because meanwhile, people are walking around getting ready for parade practice because we're about to graduate, right? So I'm walking around like, oh man, like I stick out because I'm wearing the only uniform that no one else is wearing that day. So everyone that knows me is like, that's not a good sign, right? Like everyone knows what that means. So not only am I trying to talk to my attorney, and I'm being escorted across, you know, the academy to get all my records and leave, everyone's asking me what's going on. And I'm like, I don't know what to say. By the time I get back to the squadron, I didn't sign anything. I asked to speak to the superintendent. The superintendent denied wanting to talk to me.
Is that the guy?
General Gold.
General Gould.
Yeah. So I made a request.
He had nothing nice to say about you, huh?
Yeah. Asked to speak to him. He didn't want to speak to me. The attorney is sending him emails saying, sir, you are missing it. He didn't even acknowledge that he was getting it. So when I got to my squadron, and this was just, I think my AOC just kind of putting the last nail in there. You know, it was tough because, you know, here's like all your friends of 5 years, and you're like, I don't know what to tell you guys. And then so I had to get my trunk, load all my stuff up in my trunk. Then my commander called me to the office, and I had to take my ring off and give it to him. Had to take all. You gotta be better at this for 7 years, right?
No, you're totally fine. This is a.
I had to take.
You can cry all day. Seriously.
Yeah, right.
I'm so sorry about this.
I had to take. It was just. I don't know. It's just it's tough because you can't say anything, right?
It
So
broke you down.
yeah. So and everything has a meaning at the academy, and so it just kind of sucked because I was stripped of everything, and then like I'm walking around. I'm literally at this point, I'm just like in blues. I'm basically like a freshman outranks me, right? I just gave him a ring, and I just gave him my lieutenant bars, and you know, a lot of my close friends are like in my room, and like some of like my female classmates are like crying, like, oh my God, what's happening? And I'm like, I don't know what's happening. I'm trying to like kind of put on the front, like, hey, don't worry, guys, like I'll be back here, right? Like, don't. It's nothing. Like, there's just a misunderstanding, and so I'm still being escorted, and I had to carry my chest. It was like an 80-pound chest into the elevator, and I can hear comments. Even my AOC is kind of like cracking with some of the other guys, and get in the elevator, and then my AMT is telling me I've got to escort you to wherever you're staying as well. So I mean, just another slap in the face that man, even when I'm driving off base, I had to be escorted. And so I'm thinking, I'm still trying to be optimistic, like, hey, I'm going to get this sorted out. It's just confusion because they don't know what's actually going on, and trying to give the benefit of the doubt, like, hey, look, if I was in a command position, this is all I knew. Like, that's probably what I would think too. And so I get it. And so they're just missing it. Like, if I just had the chance to tell them what's going on, it would clear it up. I mean, it would clear it up. And so I'm sitting in a at my sponsor family's house, but I'm like, hey, like I'm gonna stay closer to the academy because I want to be right there when I can just drive back on base, figure this out, and I'm gonna graduate. Like it's 6 weeks, right? And so I went to like a Motel 8 or something like that, right? So I think like as the weeks, or as I guess the days were turning into weeks, and I'm thinking like, let me just get this stuff together. And then it's like, it doesn't hit you until like, like then the Thunderbirds start coming because they're practicing that week, right? Because this is the week you graduate. So and so you think like, all right, well, I'll get my stuff figured out, right? Like we planned a vacation together, right? Like all my boys and stuff, when we graduate, we got 60 days leave. So let me try to get this figured out. But I'm going to be there for my boys' graduation, all my friends' graduation, stuff like that. So it's like, okay, cool. Well, they denied any access I could get on base, right? So I couldn't, yeah.
Oh my God.
So then I think like it turned more into like, I felt like in the beginning I was saying like, you become like a family, right? Yeah. So I feel like I let them down. Anyway,
didn't let them down.
yeah, so
You did the right thing.
So I couldn't go for graduation. I thought, man, okay, that hits hard. Then I wanted to go for at least the commissioning part, right? Let me at least see my boys get sewn on officially, right? Everyone's family is here, and it's time of celebration. And then I also got denied being able to go to that. So I thought, man, like, sitting here in this Motel 8, Motel 6, and like, we just buckle down and like get my stuff because it's just a mistake. And as soon as they see it, like it'll, then I'll have everyone there. We'll be a week delayed, and then we'll carry on our way, right? And so, I'm still trying, and nothing is being really. I mean, they're not even acknowledging that they're getting my stuff. My attorney's just working in overtime to put stuff together and say, hey, look, we've got more information, but this should have because we were able to correspond some of the OTF violations with text messages saying, I'll meet you here, coming from the agents. So it was enough to say, hey, there is more that you're missing. And if you could help us talk to them, we could clear this up. And so nothing. And so, it goes from May to June to July. And at this point, like, man, like they just got to see it, right? And then didn't want to talk, didn't want anything. And it took literally me from that point making a request to Congress to say, I can't get my documentation. Can you make a request? And once they did, all of a sudden now in July, a partial response comes back with over 300 documentations, heavily redacted, of the information I was fighting to get. Made an IG complaint before Actually, my attorney did that before leaving, right? Say, hey, we don't know what's going on, but it's up with OSI. Well, they gave me this kind of spill that, we can't investigate OSI because it's kind of like an in-house thing, or it's just some real BS type of reason that they can look into the academy, but they can't look into the OSI side. So they just look into the academy. And of course, they're not going to find anything, right? Because that wasn't the issue. And so I thought, okay, well, I've done what we're taught to do. IG complaint. Could talk to everyone in your chain of command, request to speak to them, provide documentation. I mean, there was nothing else I could do in terms of providing it to your superiors. And so finally, I said, okay, well, I'm going to go to the media then, because this is insane. This is so wrong. And that's when I came across Dave Phillips and started telling him what was going on. And then, as you and the listeners could probably find, I wasn't giving them or trying to give them a black eye, just telling them exactly what I'm saying now, that I was working for OSI and I was in this program and I was disenrolled and discharged as a result. That story didn't come out till later on that year. And later on that year, Special Agent Enos called me, and I think this is kind of a good part for like your season 1 ending, is that all up until that point, I never heard from Enos, right? Didn't hear from him from the Merck timeframe.
Since the Merck,
yeah. In September, October of 2013, my attorney called me to say that Special Agent Enos contacted him because he was being retaliated for wanting to speak on my behalf. Yeah, they stripped his card, they stripped his access to certain buildings. He was vacuuming floors, taking out trash, and he called. And the reason they did that is because the congressional inquiry to get documentation got back to OSI, and OSI was taking it out on Enos. And so Enos, now in fear for his own safety, contacted my attorney because he knew who I was working with, to say, hey, long time no talk, let me fill you in on everything that was going on. And once that happened, and my attorney called me to tell me, hey, you won't believe who I talked to. And I thought, you're kidding. Obviously I was upset, right? Like, dude, man, like, I was hurt, I think, more than anything, because I know that Enos is a good guy, but he finally filled in all the gaps that I didn't have answers to and what was going on, and explaining that the OSI commander went up there and lied, explaining that your FOIA request, they just didn't find it, explaining that he had made multiple requests to speak on my behalf and they denied it, explaining that General Gould was a large part trying to stop investigations, trying to get after Clark to graduate, not wanting to talk about you, that they were basically wondering, where's this information coming from, type of thing. And so when he came to light and he was willing to speak to the reporter, December 3rd, 2013 was the first crack in all of this. And then it took a whole different light of its own.
General Gould making you famous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks
and
for destroying everybody's lives.
So yeah, so that's season 1. So that's that's season 1.
Douchebag.
Yeah. And season 2, and again, I if I had it my way, I would have just graduated. And if I had it my way, I would have just I didn't go to the media as like a first resort. I only went to the media because no one was listening to anything, and there were no other options after checking all these boxes. And so, even to today, my intent is literally just to get back in and serve. And I'm constantly, even to today, which I'll explain, I guess, more in season 2, that I'm trying every means possible to do so, both public and private. And and I hope maybe you guys could tell that I'm not trying to be inflammatory or anything like that, because I don't think there is. I'm just being as honest as I can. And I think maybe, yeah, there's some definite lack of accountability in a lot of different areas. Um, and I could be bitter and all that other stuff, but I don't think it really helps anyone. And I'm hoping that at the end of the day, this experience will make me kind of a better leader going in, because I know what it's like to go through some of this. So
You're an amazing leader, and I'll just end it with this, and then we will do a
yeah,
episode 2. Um, Eric Thompson reached out to the Obama "It's on Us" campaign that was started in 2013. It was to reduce sexual assault in the military, and Eric Thomas reached out to Nancy Parrish, who was the nonprofit leader of Protect Our Defenders, and she wrote a letter on Eric's behalf to the Obama administration. And if you want to just share that screen real quick so that,
yeah,
we have some
yeah.
kind of
Let me
proof.
bring that up.
He reached out to Obama, the guy who talked a big talk about ending sexual assault. He quoted him in the letter, and Eric had no response. He wrote that letter in 2014. Nancy Parrish sent it. There was no response whatsoever. In 2016, the summer of it, also he wrote another letter, and here is the letter right now. Dear Mr. President, in a speech you gave in May 2013, you said, "For those who are in uniform, who've experienced sexual assault, I want them to hear directly from their commander in chief that I've got their backs." Okay. I, based on this story alone, I don't even need to keep reading this letter, but that is just complete bullshit. But you don't get anything from the Obama Biden administration on sexual assault. They are just talk, and it is clear with your letter right here. Mr. President, Mr. Former President Barack Obama, Mr. Wannabe President Biden, what are you going to do about sexual assault? Because the next step is reaching our current president, Donald Trump. He's actually serious about changing everything that's wrong. And I think we have to drain the swamp in the United States military. And the way we get there is apparently the president, because how many how many Congress and Senate bipartisan support have you received from these people? Let's just list them off right now. We have Senator McSally from Arizona, Senator Thune from South Dakota, Congresswoman Jackie Spears from California, Senator Gillibrand from, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, from New York, Senator Cornyn from Texas, Senator Perdue from Georgia, Senator deceased Senator McCain from Arizona, Congressman Bob Thorpe from Arizona. There's much more people to list, but all these people are well aware of this, and it's all about politics. So maybe, Eric, you can end this with
Yeah,
saying some last words, because you
yeah,
have
definitely.
tried everything you could possibly try to get your story heard, to just serve our country, really.
Yeah, and I appreciate the time and the opportunity to speak. Where I'm at now, like I said, all of that was kind of season one. Season two is just filled with different investigations and how the story came out to light. It was on the New York Times, then it went to the ABC News and ESPN, and after several years of investigations and whatnot, although I'm thankful for the support from those people. Where I'm at today is I am still looking 7 years later for an audience with someone who has authority to hear my case, and hopefully allow me to continue serving. That's really what it comes down to. So I'm making efforts now to try to speak to President Trump. I don't know how to get that way. So, if your listeners can share, I wouldn't have gotten even this far without the people, because the strongest level of accountability in our country is going to be the people, as we could probably tell in our current climate. You know, Oceans and mountains will move according to the people, and so to me, it's an apolitical issue.
Exactly.
It doesn't really matter too much on whether or not you're a Trump supporter or not. It doesn't really matter so much on your take on sexual assaults or not. I'm just hoping that you can help me gain a voice, because I don't have one without you. So, yeah, share, talk about it. Um, if you want to ask any questions, I mean, I'm such an open book. You could go to Honor and Deception on Facebook. I have a page up there. I'm working with some people here in Georgia to make another location. I can give that to you
What is the
once I get
Facebook
that.
page called?
Honor and Deception.
Honor and Deception on Facebook.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, Honor and Deception. Or you can email me at ericthomas.eet@gmail.com, or shoot me a message on Facebook. But I think just the biggest thing you could do is, no voice is too small. Wherever you're at and wherever you're listening to, if you can, share the story, put it to your radio, put it to your representative. I'm at a place now where it's just a swipe of a pen. It's literally that. It's a swipe of a pen. And so the more people talk about it, I think the more it'll help. And that's really all I'm asking.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the Bad Mom podcast. It's been a
Yeah,
pleasure, and I'm actually
appreciate it.
humbled to share your story. And I want to just be clear with my listeners. The reason that I'm sharing this story is because, as a mother who really and truly deeply cares to prevent any type of abuse from perpetuating in our children in adulthood, because that's the cycle of abuse that we don't want to perpetuate. With domestic violence, it's a cycle. So these perpetrators that feel like they can come on campus, whether it's civilian or military, and abuse the system, abuse and create victims and ruin their lives. Really, with sexual assault and any type of abuse, you suffer trauma that lasts with you forever. So if you want to assault people, okay, that's coming from somewhere. That's something built up into you that is taught. You are taught that. You are taught to abuse other people. That doesn't just come from somewhere. If you disagree with me, that's fine. You can email me at the badmompodcast@gmail.com. We can discuss it. If you're a victim of sexual assault, if you're a victim of any type of violence, domestic abuse, injustice in our system, email me. Let's talk about it, because this is what the podcast is about. I really, really want to help somebody. And Eric Thomas, I hope that I'm helping you by spreading your story and raising awareness for
Yeah,
sexual assault in the military.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay. Like, share, subscribe. I know I'm really new at this, but I really appreciate the support. And nothing makes me happier than helping other people, sharing their story, giving victims of abuse, injustice a voice is really what makes me happy. And I feel like I'm giving back. So if there's something that you want to talk about that's relating to my No Bad Kids nonprofit that I'm starting off, which focuses on education, to educate our youth to not be victims, to look for red flags, to set boundaries, to prevent them from being victims in adulthood, in sexual relations and friendship relations, any kind of relations, teachers. Our kids are our future, and that is my focus. So thank you so much. And thank you, Eric Thomas. This has been a
Thank you.
pleasure. Take
Appreciate
care.
it. I will. Thanks.